I'd like to widen our focus here a little bit and talk about the types of data we collect, flight data, how we collect it, and what we do with it after it's collected. Not just in these particular incidents, but other incidents, because I find it odd that 2 weeks, 30 days after the incident, there's still speculation and guessing about what the pilots did, how did they react, and we don't know. Probably just about everybody in this room has a camera in their pocket. And earlier in this hearing, we saw a picture of a 1967 flight deck of a 737 versus a 2017 flight deck of a 737 MAX. And I understand why in 1967 there weren't cameras in the cockpit. Can you speak to why we don't have cameras in the cockpit, cameras that are cheap and would answer so many of these questions we're still speculating about, it seems? Mr. Sumwalt, please.
Thank you very much for that question. The NTSB has, in fact, recommended that
I'm talking about for commercial flights, of course.
That's right. Cockpit image recorders should be required for commercial flights. We have, for airline flights, we have made that recommendation, and it has not been acted upon.
Why hasn't it been acted upon?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a question that the regulator should answer.
Can I ask you, Mr. Elwell? Do you have a thought on that?
So the FAA works with our colleagues at the NTSB very closely, and we take every recommendation the NTSB makes and we examine it and we evaluate it for safety of flight. And that is our first and foremost consideration. And Chairman Sumwalt and I have not always disagreed on all the recommendations, but I think we would both say that the semi-symbiotic relationship that we have has been part and parcel of where we are today and the safety record we have today.
Let me ask about the way we collect the data. Can you explain to my constituents why for $10 they can get internet on a flight for the whole flight, yet we're still chasing down a physical black box to find out what happened in the cockpit? Why do we have to go to the crash site to recover the data in this day and age? And why is all the data lost if we can't find the black box? Mr. Sumwalt or Ms. Schultz, if you'd like to answer.
Sure, thank you for that question.
I'm not advocating getting rid of the black box. I'm saying why can't we augment it with some streaming?
Sure, and I think the industry has been looking at this from a technical standpoint to understand what is technically feasible, but I think that is something that would be an important backup to the equipment on the aircraft, which is still a valuable tool, and in these accidents, extremely valuable for us to understand what was going on on the aircraft and in the cockpit.
It's hard for me to explain to my constituents who get on the plane and get internet why it's not technically feasible. Now, I know why it wouldn't work in every situation, and why you need the black box. But let me go to my third question, which is what do we do with the data after we retrieve it? Mr. Sumwalt, why doesn't the NTSB publish all data from the black box immediately upon retrieval?
Well, thank you very much. We do eventually publish that, and let me point out that the NTSB uses a party system. So when we have the data, the manufacturer has it, it's shared with the manufacturer, with the FAA, with anybody who needs it to be able to understand the circumstances of that crash so that they can make immediate safety fixes.
I appreciate your answer, but I said immediately, and you said eventually.
Okay, if we're talking about public release of the information, yes, that does become available when we open the public docket.
Why not make it immediate? What benefit is conveyed upon society by withholding that data from the manufacturer, the person who actually made the equipment? Why aren't they allowed to have it immediately, and why is the NTSB allowed to withhold or block them from getting that data when, and I'm talking about the difference between immediately and eventually, because lives could be lost eventually.
All right, let me make an important clarification. The manufacturer and the FAA has access to that information immediately when we have it. They are part of our party process. They are in the room reviewing the data immediately with us.
I'm glad to have your assurance on that. I have some manufacturers that have experienced different results. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.